Well, Bannerlord's beta has been out for some time, and I finally think it's my time to give the opinion that nobody cares about. My opinion on the top 5 best units in Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord. Now, this video has the potential to be fairly long, so either I'm going to edit it down a lot, but either way, we're going to get straight into it because I can tell that people aren't going to be sitting here for ages. But this is my top 5 unit in Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord. The Kurzite Mounted Archer. They're the main striking force of the Kurzite Horde, and every tribe in the Confederacy is expected to muster its best men when the Khan marches to war. They fight with speed, patience and cunning, stinging the enemy force with their arrows until it's sufficiently softened up to move in for the kill. Now, I love the Kurzite Mounted Archers. They're pretty powerful when it comes to most aspects of the game. Armed with a one-handed bow, they can ping arrows from a distance while running circles around the enemies. Now, it doesn't quite have the damage and ammo of other bows, but it's got really good fire rate, which is what you need when on horseback, being able to pin off as many arrows as possible just to keep the enemy suppressed. The Mounted Archers aren't necessarily the ones that are going to be getting the most kills, but they're going to be the ones that are distracting and harassing the enemy the most. I think if you've seen one of my previous battles on Captain Mode, my team just got absolutely harassed by these guys and we couldn't do anything, even as the Sturgier with massive shields. Furthermore, they are armed with a sword aptly named the Killage. It's got pretty decent swing speed and of course thrust speed as well. It's got very good handling, but once again not great on the damage, used for just protection if needed to, and to deal a bit of softening damage when they lose all their arrows and they've got to go in. Now, the horse isn't incredible of the Kurzites. It's not built for power and it's not built for damage. It basically does no charge damage at all and it can die pretty fast. But at this point, you're not going to be charging into battle with these guys. You're going to be sitting at the back and running away if needed to, and that's why they have some great speed on them. But whilst we all know how horse archers work and what they're used for in the battles, what perks can you get with them in Bannerlord at the moment? Well, of course, you can get your faster bow. That will increase your firing speed and of course make you more efficient at loosing more arrows in a short amount of time to keep the enemies pinned down. Maybe you want to get a faster horse, or maybe even a tougher horse, changing the charge damage from 2 up to 8, which can do a lot of difference if you're going to be charging into the enemy head on, but as I said, it's not entirely recommended. On top of this, for your secondary, you can get some extra ammo, a small shield in case you want to protect yourself, and finally we have the spear. Now, I would definitely recommend this one as the Kurzites if you're planning on getting down and dirty, because even if you're still on horseback, the spear gives you that extra range to be able to get in and do some damage from a bit further back than you would be able to with your sword previously. The Mounted Archer is great for harassing the enemy, and it can do its fair share of damage if it needs to, and that's why it's at number 5. Among the peasants' levies, biggest, meanest and quickest are selected and trained to become the feared Volunteers. These polearm-wielding soldiers serve Valandian armies as shock troopers and lay waste to enemy infantry. At the number 4 spot, we have the Valandian Volunteer. Now, this guy, as you've seen in many of my videos, I love to use. He is very powerful and very, very strong. They have more health than many other of the infantries and many of the troops in Bannerlord itself. They've got pretty decent armor, and as we'll come on to later, especially if you upgrade that. Now, they're not very fast, but they do the damage, and that's where they come in. As I said, they are shock troopers. They're not going to be able to withstand a lot of arrows or even overwhelming odds, but if you can get in there fast and get in there to help other enemies that are maybe holding the line, they're going to be great when it comes down to it. They are very stacked up when it comes to melee damage, and the melee damage is where they come into their own. Initially, on the starting class, you'll have a military bill. Now, this military bill is pretty good against cavalry and, of course, swing damage, but watch out because it's not going to be easy to use in close quarters situations if you're maybe in a building or very tightly packed formations. As a secondary, they have a western long arming sword. Great for those closer tight packed formations, you're able to get more thrusts in there rather than hitting your teammates, as you probably see I do quite a lot with this class. And of course, the all pike. That comes in to help you defend against cavalry if you don't particularly have that military bill to help you. But why wouldn't you have that military build? Well, that takes us on to the perks. Initially, as your primary, you can get a two-handed sword, which is my favourite weapon for these guys. Now, it can cut through a weak unit in one hit and pretty much any other unit in 2 hits. The overhead attack, as you can imagine, just lays waste to everything in its path. And additionally, you can get improved armor if that's more your thing, which is pretty self-explanatory. As our secondary perk, you can get the old pike, as I explained before. You can get Franciscas, which are very effective throwing axes against infantry and, of course, their shields. And finally, javelins, which are good against lighter armored units and, of course, harassing other units just to keep them down. Javelins, not necessarily my favourite, but that's the rules here. I think it's time to bring some of the Empire into it. The Empire Cataphract is a special type of unit. They are an incredibly heavily armoured cavalry unit, as you would expect. They might not be the best in the game for all situations, but they definitely are very versatile. Of course, as you can see, they are very heavily armoured. When one thinks of Imperial shock troopers, one pictures the famed Cataphract of the Empire. They're armoured from head to toe in the best steel the Empire's forges can forge, maintained as a full-time soldier at the palace's expense. These professional cavaliers have nothing to do but train with lances, composite recurve bows, swords, and axes. They can pretty much do anything. When you spawn in with one of these, your default class and loadout will be a heavy contos. This is a really great thrusting spear. Furthermore, you have the hunting bow. This comes as default with the Cataphract as your secondary. Yes, they're not necessarily a horse archer and they won't be able to go up against in ranged battles against the Kurzite horse archers, but they can still harass the enemies. These are weak bows, but as I said, when it comes down to it, you can keep people distracted and get behind the enemy to keep them away from the main battle. Of course, you have the Imperial Battle Axe, which is great for attacking shields, bringing down damage on any enemy armoured units, and your Imperial Warhorse, being much better at charging than any other horse in this. It has 13 charge damage and can knock through pretty much anyone. For the perks, you can get a better bow. This replaces the hunting bow with an Imperial bow. It is pretty much better in every way. It's a very similar bow to the one that you're going to be using with the mounted archers of the Kurzates. And of course, a Nagel horse, which makes your big, fat, lumbering horse a bit more maneuverable and faster. Furthermore, as your secondary perk, you have the axe, a sword if you want to do the more thrusting route or dueling, and of course, a mace, which is perfect against armoured opponents, and I'm guessing in the single player for taking prisoners, if that's what you need to be doing. Now, I often put down the Saronids and Warband and the Aserai in Bannerlord because really, they're pretty weak factions when it comes to it. They're just not very good, and in Warband they were already pretty underpowered a lot of the time, and Bannerlords, as I experienced a lot in early games, they were the same. But the other day I played a game, and either they've been updated or I just hadn't really experienced someone using the Aserai well. They have a very, very powerful unit. Now, they have Mamelukes, as you would expect, which are a very good cavalry unit, but they're not the Aserai veterans. This is a ranged unit that I've seen trump pretty much every other ranged unit in Bannerlord. Maybe crossbowmen or other archers, they seem to be able to get down the fire and the kills faster than anyone else. The Aserai veterans are among the oldest and most experienced of the fighters of the tribe. Raid, battle and siege has given them ample opportunity to learn both skills to survive and to loot good weapons and armour. They're both deadly archers but also dangerous melee combatants. They're pretty fast on their feet, but as we said, they've got decent armour, so they can take a hit. They're armed with the composite bow, which you could expect is very good. It's got great fire rate and great accuracy and does a ton of damage against weaker to mid-armoured units and even heavily armoured units. They can take their health down for someone else to go off and finish them off. And of course, in their melee hand, they have the Cascara, which has a lot of swing speed, and it can be compared to the Spamatar of old, as many of you may know. On their perks, they have a stronger bow, which replaces the recurve bow that you initially have with this composite bow. Also have the mace, which once again is better against the armoured opponents, and improved armour, which is where you really want to be putting your points because they are very, very vicious when it comes into melee. They have the extra ammos as a secondary perk, or a small shield if that's more your thing, if you're going to be going into a bit more battle, or even armour piercing ammo, which means that even the heavily armoured units that I said they're not as effective against won't be able to hide from them for too much longer. But what could be the best troop in the game. Well, this is another one that's gone through a naming rehaul, and I actually am surprised that they changed it to a more generic name, but this is the Berserker of Sturgia. The Wolfcoats are the elite northern lander mercenaries that wield great two-handed axes and other fearsome weapons. With simple wolf skins to cover them, these agile warriors are famous for fighting in reckless abandon to search as a shock troop to break the enemy line. Whilst they don't have the armor and they can't take many hits from arrows, they're going to be doing a lot of damage, very similar to the Volunteers as shock troopers, although with even less armor. It will take about 2 or 3 arrows to take these guys down, so if you want to counter them, that's the way to go. But as soon as you get into melee with them, you don't stand a chance. As you can see in Exhibit A, us just destroying this rebel with our axes. We were greatly outnumbered 3 to 1, but they didn't stand a chance. With the northern two-handed axe, you have such a big swing damage, 141. I think that's the biggest swing damage you get with any other weapon in the game, but you also have pretty good handling with this thing. It's quite fast, even though you might not expect that initially when it comes down to it. But furthermore, with the first perk, you can have a two-handed maul, which I'm not a massive fan of. It does a lot of blunt damage, you can knock people to the ground, but unfortunately, it's very, very slow. But if you're coming up against some other armored opponents, this might be the weapon for you. Or if you want to get more improved armor, I would go with that. It provides +9 armor, so maybe able to take an extra arrow if you want to, but at the end of the day, I would sort of miss out the improved armor on these guys because that's not what they're made for. You might as well get the longer axe to get that better range with it. On your secondary perk, you can get a sword for those encounters where you're in very tight formations, but I would say that's a pretty much useless perk for these guys. It's the throwing axes that I think are really useful. Being able to break enemy shields before coming in, because yes, their two-handed axe can smash through enemy shields, but if they're weakened before, the difference between 3 or 1 hit is going to be massive when it comes to breaking a shield. Being able to wipe up enemies as fast as possible is where the Berserkers shine. This is because if you're spending ages trying to take out another unit, you're going to be dangerously exposed to archers or other cavalry. So killing them as fast as possible is what you're going to be wanting to do. So throwing axes to get in there and soften them up before you chop them up with your big lumbering axes is the way to go. Or if it's more your thing, you can use javelins, which once again do quite a bit of damage, but they're more for softening people up. But they can also be used as a melee weapon if you would for some reason do that and use a javelin as a melee weapon while you've got a long axe on your back. Who knows? But I think the Berserker, for me, is the best unit in Bannerlord at the moment for the gameplay style that I love doing. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it. I really hope you did, and I hope it wasn't too long for you. Make sure you leave the comments any other videos you'd like me to do, and I'll probably do run-throughs of most of the troops in Bannerlord eventually. But until then, guys, I will see you in the next one.